My grandfather tried to manipulate, bribe, and force me into plastic surgery. L. Hey, Reddit. My name is Edwards, 22 million, and this is a story about my controlling grandfather, 81 million, who spent years trying to force me into plastic surgery. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up. The problem with my ear. I was born with two slightly different ear shapes. One of them curls in a little, but it's not super noticeable unless you're staring at me from up close. It doesn't affect my life in any way, except that earbuds fall out more easily. Kids teased me a bit, but whatever. It was just how I looked. My grandfather, however, did not see it that way. To him, I wasn't perfect. And that was unacceptable. Looking back, I realized he had been making comments about my ear since I was in preschool. But things really escalated when I turned 14, the age you can legally get plastic surgery in my former country. The manipulation begins. Practically every day, he'd remind me of my hideous and atrocious ear. At the time, I lived with my mom, 43F, his daughter, and he lived in the apartment below us. This meant he had easy access to my life and never missed an opportunity to put me down. One day, after months of brainwashing, he took me to a fancy restaurant, just the two of us. Keep in mind, my mom and I were lower middle class, while he was more on the upper class side. I thought it was just a nice lunch, but when dessert arrived, he casually asked, "Do you want to finally get plastic surgery and look normal?" As always, I told him no. I liked how I looked. I was unique. His response? He silently stood up, paid the bill, yanked me by the arm, and dragged me to his car before I got to finish my cheesecake. He shoved me out in front of our apartment and drove off without another word. He was supposed to watch me that evening since my mom had to work late. But instead, he ignored me completely. I had no keys, so I sat outside for 6 hours until my mom came home. Luckily, it happened in April just after my B-day, so it was warm enough. The bribery phase. A few weeks later, he started talking to me again, acting like nothing had happened. One day, he even picked me up early from school and took me out to a restaurant, a cheaper one, but it had a carousel park nearby, which I loved. Strangely, for the first time in years, he didn't mention my ear, not once. Instead, we just had fun. And over the next few weeks, he kept this up. Movies, museums, my favorite, restaurants. No insults, no guilt tripping. It felt nice. Then one day, during a car ride home, he asked, "What do you want most? I'll buy it for you." A 14-year-old being asked an open-ended question like that? I was ecstatic. I asked for a gaming PC. Without hesitation, he drove me straight to the store and told me to pick out whatever I wanted, setting a budget of 2,000 euros. To me, that was an insane amount of money. I picked out my dream setup, practically shaking with excitement. Then at the register, he turned to me and said, "All right, pay up." I blinked. "What? Oh, you don't have the money? Well, I'll give it to you. On one condition. You will fix your ear." His voice was deep and demanding, loud but not yelling, but firm. I started crying and ran out of the store. I literally ran 5 kilometers home. When I told my mom, she was livid. She stormed downstairs, pounded on his door until he opened up, and they argued for a long time. When she came back, she was in tears, but she told me I had done the right thing. The final attempt. Kidnapping me to a surgeon. The next day, my grandfather acted completely normal. Again, he picked me up from school, was super friendly, and told me he had a surprise for me. On one hand, I knew he was up to something. On the other, he had taught me from a young age to use people for what they could offer. So I got in the car, hoping for another fun day. Instead, he drove me to a private health clinic. Once inside, he introduced me to his friend, a plastic surgeon. They talked for a while before the surgeon took my measurements. Then, just before signing the documents, the surgeon turned to me and asked, "Which one of you wants this surgery today?" I was frozen. My grandfather immediately answered, "He does!" "He's just nervous." I pointed at him and held back tears. The doctor frowned. "Well, I can't perform surgery if the patient doesn't want it." My grandfather then lied and said he was my legal guardian because my parents were dead. He tried to fake documents to authorize the surgery, but thankfully, the doctor refused. At that point, I completely broke down, terrified that something had happened to my mom. My grandfather sighed, drove me home without saying a word again. and handed me off to my mom, who had no idea where I had been. That was the breaking point. We went low contact with him for a few years, or possibly he was punishing us by ignoring us, as he tended to do. The aftermath. Eventually, when I needed braces, he offered to help pay for them. We were tight on money, so my mom reluctantly agreed. He promised to cover half of the cost. In reality, he paid for half of my top braces, a quarter of the bottom, and not to mention how he didn't think it was necessary to pay 20 euros every 2 weeks for a couple of years for tightening. He still, every couple of months or so, tried to bribe me to get the surgery, or to accept money as loan that I didn't need to pay back, or any other way he could think to get control over me. Even now, years later, he's still trying to control me. I moved to a different country after college to get away from him. I have no job yet, my savings are draining, and, almost like he sensed it, he reached out last week. Do you want 10,000 euros? All you have to do is get this quick, simple surgery, and the money is yours. I didn't even reply. The family fallout. After the incident at the clinic, my grandfather went on a smear campaign, telling our extended family that my mom, his own daughter, had turned me against my loving and caring grandfather. Most of them believed him. My mom and I were banned from family gatherings, holidays, and celebrations. He even told us we had no right to use our own last name anymore. The only person who stayed on our side was my grandmother, may she rest in peace. Final thoughts. I know this was a lot, and I am sorry for dumping it on you guys and gals, but I needed to tell someone. The last 2 therapists I saw sided with him, so I feel like I have no one unbiased to talk to. To be clear, I will never get the surgery. I will never take his money.